Hi, my name is Phil Tossell. I'm one of the game creators on Tengami.
Cool. Just to start with, what led you to start with Meow Meow and leave Rare and go and do your own thing?
So I guess there was a number of reasons, really. Some personal reasons and some professional reasons. And, we wanted to make games that were kind of different from what we were able to make in mainstream. Teams have got bigger and bigger over the years that I'd been making games, and it was getting more and more impersonal, and you had less kind of impact on the game that you were making. So we wanted to get back to having a small team and making the kind of games that we wanted to make. Really.
Have you found it hard going back to such a small team from something big, or is it a refreshingly great, liberating experience?
Yeah, there's kind of pluses and minuses, I guess. When I started at Rare 15 years ago, the teams were pretty small as well. So you had maybe, I started on the Decom Racing team, and there was maybe 12 people on that team. It's kind of like an indie-sized team nowadays, anyway, some of the bigger indies. And then it kind of ramped up, and then now we've gone back to 3 again. So the good things are you get your hand in everything, and you have complete control over everything that you want. The downside is you don't have people who you can just go, hey, can you just do this and can you do that? You have to do everything yourself.
Does that mean many late nights of work?
Lots of late nights. I mean, more than I'd like, ideally. I mean, you'd like to try and keep some kind of balance between your work and your personal life, but at the moment it's very, very intense, for sure.
Yeah. So with Tengami, it's your first game. What is the influence behind? What's the idea and the storyline?
Yeah, so the main influence is the pop-up aspect of the game, which really came from when we were kind of kids and used to play with pop-up books. I think a lot of children have played with pop-up books when they were younger, so it has a kind of nostalgic feeling to it. And we wanted to see if we could kind of reproduce that kind of feeling that you have of when you're a kid. It's like this flat book that you're looking at, and then you kind of open it, and it's like, wow, how is this kind of possible? And you kind of looking at it, trying to figure out how this actually works. And so we wanted to kind of through touch, kind of see if we could create that kind of tactile feel and that sense of wonder that you get. And then there's the other influence is the kind of Japanese kind of aesthetic and sensibilities of the game, which comes from all of us have some connection with Japan. Our artist Rio is Japanese. Jennifer's lived and worked in Japan for 4 years, and I've always had a great fascination with Japan, which started with video games and manga and anime, and then kind of went from there to the more traditional side of arts and crafts in Japan. So we wanted to kind of inject that into the game, and it seemed like a natural fit because the game's about pop-up books which are made of paper, and Japan has a great history of traditional handmade papers, and so we kind of merged the two together.
Do you find it hard to create an engine that could replicate the pop-up aspect?
Yeah, it was a lot of work. I'd say the first year was spent just kind of building the tools and tech that we needed to make the game. Jennifer spent a lot of time learning how pop-ups are actually made, sort of making physical pop-ups, so we could kind of understand the mechanics involved. And then from there we kind of built a tool set to actually so we could actually build digital pop-ups on the computer. And it's kind of like a Lego kit. You kind of plug things together, and then it guarantees that it will fold. So
that's really cool. Could you ever imagine that technology being used elsewhere, maybe in ebooks sorts? Or?
Yeah, I mean we've often talked about using the kind of tech to actually just make more like a traditional book, and it would be really kind of cool to do that. It's not something that I think we want to do because we want to make games, but definitely we've thought about could we find someone who's really passionate about that and actually, you can apply different styles to it as well. It doesn't have to be a Japanese style, it could be an illustrated style. So yeah, there's definitely potential.
That's really cool. In terms of the gameplay aspect, it's very much point and click, almost like point and click adventure, but the puzzles at the same time aren't like point and click adventure puzzles, they're more physical, interactive with the environment. How do you come up with the ideas to create such physical based puzzles in the world?
Just lots of experimentation, really. We wanted to avoid the traditional kind of point and click cliches, like talking to characters, limited action choices. And because it was a touch game, we wanted it to all be about interaction with this pop-up book. And then it's kind of trying to just come up with different ways that you can interact with it and keep surprising the player with different. So when they think they've got used to it, okay, it's just opening and closing things, and then you can create paths with that. And then later on we introduce some more kind of observational things which kind of catch the player by surprise because they're not expecting it. And it's really just we just brainstorm a lot and try out ideas, and then some of them work, sometimes they don't, and then we just build from there.
Cool. A lot of the stuff, at least, that you've shown doesn't have any dialogue in it. It's all very music and quite zen. And so, I mean, who does the music? Is that done yourselves, or you outsource that?
So we have a guy called David Wise, who again is ex-Rare, so he's pretty well known in video game music. He did the DK music originally, and so we were really lucky to have him. He's a good friend, and when we started the game, he said, "Phil, I'd really love to do the music for you." And I was like, "Well, we'd love you to do the music." And he'd never done anything Japanese style before, so I just said to him, we want something that's kind of Japanese, but mixed with kind of Western, so it's not too. Traditional Japanese music can be very harsh on the ears, very sparse. And so I just said that to him, and then he came back with some tunes, and they were pretty much in the game is what he came back with.
That's really cool. Recently it was shown up at Tokyo Game Show, and it got quite a good response. You quite happy, especially with the Japanese market, buying into the whole idea of making a Japanese game?
It's the first time we've shown in Japan. We did show at Tokyo Game Show the Sense of Wonder Night last year, which got a really good response, but this is the first time we've actually shown a playable version in Japan, so we weren't totally sure how it was going to go. But yeah, they seem to, by and large, love it, and I think they pick up on some things that a Western audience doesn't. The environments and the buildings and stuff are largely modelled on real Japanese buildings, and so that kind of they pick up on that, whereas a Western audience probably wouldn't in the same way.
Oh, cool. You brought it. It was initially made for iOS, and you brought it to Wii U now as well. Have you ever thought about bringing something like the 3DS with the 3D aspect that you can use for the pop-up books?
Yeah, definitely. A few people have said about the 3DS because the 3D aspect would be a great match for the game. We're definitely going to look at it. I think the only slight reservation we have is the screen on the 3DS is not very high resolution. So as long as we can kind of reproduce the aesthetic of the game, then we would definitely look at it.